Miss Kat Bax, who I'm interviewing today, who is one of my longest playing bassists.
Hmm.
Goodness, since the She All Stars were called, what, I can't even remember myself. I mean,
I think it was just called She, wasn't it? Or the She
yeah,
Band, or
yeah, exactly,
yeah.
exactly. So, so for a very, very long time, you've been playing in my function band, and
Hmm.
you've seen the ups and downs, and you've seen a lot of changes. And I have seen lots of changes in you as well. And I wanted to bring you along to have a bit of a chat with the guys having a listen, to discuss a bit about your career and things that you have been through, and the real life of a musician, because for me you are an extremely fantastic musician. In fact, you're without a doubt that musician that everyone goes, I'm looking for a depth, and I'm going, Kat Bax, I've got that already, I need someone else. I've got someone else. If it's not Kat, then I don't really sort of know. I mean, Ellen's and that, like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's
No, it's not only though you two, but you are definitely the two that are um, that I get the names thrown about a lot, because you've done your work in the industry. Um,
yeah.
so as you were saying, you are studying psychotherapy.
Yeah, psychotherapy at the moment. So I'm doing a 2-year diploma course, and then it's a 3-year master's on top of that as well. So it's 5 years in total.
So
Um,
and you are, or was doing that while you were on tour.
yes, yeah. So luckily in Theatreland, Mondays are days off.
Is
So
that,
that meant, what was that? Sorry.
is that just a coincidence that?
Yeah. It just was. I mean, I think that's like the old school kind of way of doing it, is like Mondays are day offs, because on Saturdays and Sundays you can do a matinee, and then you can do an evening show, so more people can come. So Mondays were days off, and that was also the day that that this course was running on. So I was just like, well, brilliant, I might as well. So what it means that essentially since September I've been doing seven
Right.
7 day kind of like runs. Yeah.
Just for the people who are watching, what tour are you on, or was you on before the lockdown?
So I was playing for the musical called Six, which is the London show, is currently on at the Arts Theatre. I think it's been nominated for a huge number of awards. I know that it's won quite a few, and it's now open in Australia, and it was about to open on Broadway before, unfortunately, the lockdown put a stop to that. It's a real shame.
Blown up out of nowhere, this show, because now I've got a friend who was doing it on a cruise.
Yes,
It,
yeah, the cruises, yeah, yeah.
yeah, I believe, I know, apart from you, there was someone else, I can't think off the top of my head, or I know of it playing somewhere else. It's just, blown up.
Yeah.
How was it before
Oh
the,
man. So it was an absolute party
yeah,
every night. It's a short show, so it's only about an hour and 15. And all the other shows I'd done before that, we're looking at, at least 2 hours, and then you've got the interval as well. So an hour and 15. And it's just song after song after song. And the girls, I mean, they are fantastically talented in that they have to be able to sing, dance, and act. They've got to be a triple threat. And not only that, they've all got to be really good. So, yeah, they've got to be really,
and
really good.
how does that differ to something like Functions?
So, with functions, I mean, I know a couple of singers who can't necessarily dance very well, but they've got fantastic voices. There are some.
He
Oh,
was a
sorry.
bass player. What's the difference for you from playing bass in a function and
Oh, right. Okay. Well, this one's quite unusual because normally in Theatreland, you have your music in front of you, and you don't often get seen. But in this show, we are on stage. We have names. Like I'm Bessie on the bass. and we get to interact with the queens as well. But we can constantly be seen, you know, constantly. So that's very similar to a function.
Yeah.
In that you've got to be there, you know, you've got to look good. We have our own costumes as well. Our costumes have been made for us, so that's pretty awesome. But we also with so the difference between Theatreland and Function, again, normally it would be me with the music in front of me, and I could just sit there and read, you know, just read the music, you know, have like a cup of tea next to me. But I can't do that on Six. Like, I can be seen constantly, so I am always on.
Yeah, I suppose in some ways, and I think more so now, there's an understanding that you're acting.
Yeah.
You know, it's but it's that thing. No matter what's going on in your own personal life, when you step on that stage, you have to smile. Do you know what I
Oh,
mean?
oh
So,
my God. Yeah, yeah. There's I had a I'm going to share. I'm going to do some disclosure here. My grandmother died when I was on.
expecting that, I wanted gossip.
No, sorry, no.
When?
No. This was back in October, and I got the phone call saying, you know, and unfortunately this has happened, and I was in Glasgow, and you know, it was expected. You know, she was quite elderly, and you know, as grandmothers tend to be, and it was time, you know, it was time for her to go. So I had this phone call, and I knew that she wasn't well, and then I had to go on stage,
Yeah,
and I had to smile,
yeah,
and I had to, you know, tits and teeth,
yeah,
and you know, it's that kind of side, it's that side of things that, but I didn't even think about it. You
yeah.
know, I mean, I was obviously very upset before I went on. I went on, curtain goes down because it's got this really cool kind of reveal of everything on the stage. You know, curtain went down, and I'm there like grinning away, and then for an hour and 15, you know, hour and 15, 16 minutes, it's all about the show. And then I just remember kind of getting off stage and just feeling very, you know, suddenly, you know, I kind of like kept the smile up, like, yes, I'm going off stage now. As soon as I was in the wings, just kind of broke down. But that's the importance about that kind of disconnect. When you're on stage, you're doing it for the audience, you're doing it for them. So it's really important. Sorry to bring it down a bit, but I just kind of wanted to kind of highlight
Yeah,
that.
it's the
Yeah.
reality of being an entertainer, and you know, the fact of the matter is, it's that weird thing of being a professional. When you
Yeah.
go on stage, no one needs to know anything about your personal life. You're there to do a job.
Exactly. I don't want anyone saying like, "Oh, you seemed a bit this or that the other night" or whatever. It's just like, no,
Yeah,
this is a party, man. Like, we are literally on stage. We're having the best time. Like, fantastic songs, and the show changes slightly every night as well. And it's really cool to be able to watch, because essentially the ladies in waiting, that's the name of the band. We are watching the queens, like we are the audience as well. So yeah.
and tell me a bit about your career, how you got into music to be in, I guess, where you are now.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
yeah, I initially started playing music when I was 6. I was a pianist, and then I was asked if I wanted to play the flute or clarinet. I wasn't really given a choice in the matter, and I said, "Oh, I'll play the clarinet," because I couldn't be bothered to hold my hands like that. So I figured that would be easier. And then when I was 16, I went to my mum and said, "I want to be a bass player," and it was just as simple as that. It was
you,
just as simple as that. What was that? Sorry.
what that on? What made you say I want?
I was listening to a lot of rock music at the time. I was listening to a lot of like Guns N' Roses and Metallica, and yeah, I was just like, I want to be a bass player. They look pretty cool. And I went out and bought like a um, cowboy hat, because the bass player from Guns N' Roses had one. So I decided that, of course, every bass player should have a cowboy hat. I threw it away. I don't have it anymore.
Oh, that's a shame.
I know. It's like
And then
hella.
from there, you decide you want to be a bass player.
Yeah.
Then
So then
it turns
I
a financial exchange. When do you get paid to be a bass?
um, So I mean, I wanted to do originals music.
Yeah.
So I was in a rock punk band for about 5 years, from the age of like 17, actually. And then I was asked when I was, I think, 20, 21, if I wanted to do a function. And bearing in mind that everything I'd kind of played before that was like our own stuff, you know, it was a different vibe. And bearing in mind also that I couldn't, I mean, I can read music, but I couldn't really read music on bass. And my knowledge of the instrument was very different. I was asked to do this function, and I realized I had to sit down and learn however many songs, and I had to learn them up here. Um, and I got paid at the time, like what I thought was like really good money. So I decided that, oh, this is something I can do. So I started doing some functions, and then I was asked if I wanted. Oh yeah, no, I auditioned. This is like skipping quite a lot. I auditioned and then joined an all-girl band that like an industry band that had been put together, and I did that for a while. God, and I mean the amount of free playing that I've done, because that's essentially kind of what I wanted to be. I wanted to be a rock star. And then like as time went on, I realized that actually I was good enough to get paid for my work. And I was good enough to be paid. And it went from kind of like fringe theatre work, playing for like other people's bands, and in between that, these kind of functions kind of scattered here and there.
Now, was
Yeah.
it easy for you to go to coming from an original band to going to a function? From what you said, it sounds, I was asked to a function. How did you find actually what? And this is a genuine
Mm.
question. I know how I felt when you first started to do functions. Was that an easy transition, or was it?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Because the language of the function world is very different. So, yeah, you can sit down and you can learn the song as it is on the track. But as you and I both know, having worked in the function world, there will be a way that that song ends in function land.
Yeah,
We're not all going to fade out.
my ego. I wanted to do original stuff, and I was just like going to play someone else's music at weddings, and I just wasn't interested. And then once I did it, and I sort of went, oh, actually, this is a really good way to practice
Mm.
getting good at anything else I want to do.
Yeah, that's
Amazing songs. They're
yeah.
all top.
e- Exactly, because there's going to be stuff on that set list that you would never have sat down and been like, you know what, I'm going to play Wake Me Up Before You Go Go. Like, you're never going to sit down and do that, even though the bass line is an absolute roast, but it would never have occurred to me to
Yeah,
sit down and learn it.
yeah,
So yeah, so it's a really good way to expand one's repertoire, to be able to play a very different sort of number of styles as well. And something that I really take pride in, especially when it comes to bass players who I respect, is being able to do justice to that bass line.
yeah.
So it's not just about, oh yeah, I'm just following the chord movements.
Mm,
The bass, so for example, someone like John Deacon, like the bass player for, it's a little heart cut there. Someone like John Deacon, the bass player for Queen.
yeah,
His bass lines are beautiful. They are melodic. They're not. It's not like a bass line. It's like a kind of counterpoint going on underneath. Like that. It's just lovely. It's really
yeah.
really nice to listen to. So whenever I get a Queen song to play, which is rare, other than "Don't Stop Me Now," I take great pleasure in being able to sit down and finding those nuances, finding that expression, because it's very different to other styles of playing. So yeah, I really like sitting down and digging deep into each bass line, and trying to do justice to that genre. Yeah.
And okay, in your career, so you've been doing function work and stuff
Hmm.
like. Has it always been functions? What? What I wanted to discuss with you is the reality of being a musician.
Yeah, the reality.
You know, the fact of the matter is, as I've explained, you're one of the bass players that I got the name for. So one would presume that no wonder you're so on it. Yeah, that's why this is why she gets called for all the time. It is simple math. Now you get called. You know, your name's on everyone's lips for bass. What is it like working? You know, you've made a decision, which is an important decision, as you said, to turn around and say, do you know what? I deserve to be paid now.
Yeah.
And so, how is the life of a working musician? Well, you know, when are you working every week? Are you working? I suppose because potentially you could be working every day. What is it like?
What is it like? So, for years, and I'm talking like at least 10 years, I would often have at least 2 jobs alongside playing at the weekends. And I didn't see that as me being like a weekend warrior. It was because at the end of the day, 2 gigs a week isn't going to cut it, especially kind of money wise. So I would often have jobs in well, you know, I guess they call it like a side hustle. I would often have like a side hustle on the side, as the name would imply, and that could be so. The number of jobs that I've had is just it's just ridiculous. Like I have, you name a job, and I've probably done it, because for me, playing music was what I really wanted to do, but I knew that realistically, I wasn't going to be able to afford to keep doing that. And what having another job gave me, it gave me the choice to turn down work that I didn't want to do. So something that I see, and I apologize in advance for saying this because I'm also guilty of this too, but the, you know, 40, 50 pound a gig, 40, 50 pound a night gigs. So you would do on like a Tuesday or a Wednesday. That's not something that interested me, because often those gigs are long and you often end up coming out having spent more money than you've earned for whatever reason, and that could be because of taxis, or you know, if you want to buy a drink, or or if you want to get some food.
I bought a drink, bought one person a drink, that's it.
Yeah, exactly. You know, that's gone. So what having that side hustle enabled me to do was to give me back that time. And every so often I kind of look back on that and I think in you know, if I could do that time again, would I still have all those side hustles? Because, you know, I was working sort of, you know, bearing in mind I was also doing all my practice in the morning as well. So I do my practice in the morning, go to my job, and then either have a gig in the evening or do more practice in the evening. Sorry. Yeah, okay, sorry. Yeah, so and I know that amongst musicians, especially a particular type of musician, a particular type of session musician, having a side hustle is seen as selling out. It's seen as not, you know, you're not being true to your craft. I don't think that there should be a reason for suffering, and if you need to get a job,
everyone's got to do things their way.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, that's my personal opinion.
Yeah,
I think everyone's got their own walk, and if that, and as you said, in doing that, it gave you your power back.
Yeah.
And go, I love what I do, but I don't have to take this gig where I think I'm worth more.
Yeah.
I think it's really important. I personally, as an employer, have no problem if someone turns around and says, I don't work for less than X.
Yeah.
Do you know what? Cool. I respect that. You know, what can I say? Because I don't pay, you know, I'm not going to pay your bill. I will pay a fee, which will go to your bill, but I'm not going to pay your bill. So you do whatever you need to do to make sure you do it. And the last thing I personally want, now this is me, I don't want someone turning up to my gig knowing that they don't want to be there. Like,
that's exactly it. If you turn up to and I you know, didn't come through. Sorry, go on.
getting my charger at the
Oh,
same
go for it. I mean, I didn't come to this realization through like some sort of, you know, it didn't come to me in a dream. It came to me doing gigs for crap money and then turning up and not wanting to be there. And not only that, you know, possibly not being very good company. I mean, I still did the job. I did a good, you know, I still did whoa, sorry. I still did a good job. I was happy with it, but when I stand on a stage now, I know that I want to be there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm happy. But that's something that has taken me many years to establish. And sometimes you got to do gigs you don't want to do.
Yeah.
And sometimes you got to do things you don't want to do. And you don't necessarily want to do them in your heart, but you know that later on down the line that it will be a good thing. And I think it's a lot easier to do that when you're younger, because when you're young, let's face it, you don't really know anything.
As well, when you're a bit younger, you
oh no.
baby's like, she's got to wake up now anyway because she's not, she'll be up all night. But when you're younger, as you said, sometimes you gig for free, and it's all part of practice. It's all part of learning.
It's fun.
Don't like.
Yeah.
But you know, the point is, you have to learn and you have to as a musician and turn around and go, that's a no.
Yeah.
I would rather work. And also the other side is the other side is, I do not think that everyone has to do one thing. I'm a singer. I'm also a businesswoman.
Yeah.
So that I've got more than one string to my bow. And, you know, as you said, you've done many jobs. If you could just name a few of them, just.
Oh God. So I've worked for Neal's Yard Dairy. So I've sold cheese. I'm a qualified massage therapist. I used to work for a company called Sweaty Betty. So I know how to fit trainers, and also I can put together a pretty good workout outfit if you'd like me to do that. I did that. I did that for years, actually. I worked in artist management. I did that for 2 years. I worked for Sony Music in their business admin team. So I was there. I've worked for record labels. And like being extras on a film. That was a random one. I think, and I went and sang with, God, what's her name? Married to Tim Burton. Yeah, and anyway, I went and sang with her because that was part of the film. And the director said, like, oh, can you, and her and Carrie Mulligan, I had to kind of sit, I was put in a van, and as an extra, I was put in the back of a van, and they just kind of had a camera in there and said, all right, can you sing the song? And I got a lot of respect from these A-list celebrities, because I told the sound engineers, I said, could you give us another 2 bars at the start, please? And they said, well done, that's exactly what we needed. And I was like, but of course inside I was like, oh my God, you know, these A-listers, you know, but that was just random. I was picked out of 200 extras. They just pointed at me and said, you look right, can you come and do this? So just kind of being in the environment. Thank you, Helena Bonham Carter. Thank you, Suze. Just kind of being in an environment, trying different things. It means that you meet new people. And also, weirdly enough, on that extras film set, I stood behind a girl who I now play with regularly because she was a sax player. And we were just having a chat, and she said, oh, I'm in a band called the Daisy Chains. And I said, I'm a bass player.
Daisy Chains.
Yeah, the Daisy Chains. So I occasionally gig with them as well. And yeah, just kind of being just like being in the right place at the right time. But of course, it's not really about that. It's about being in as many places as you can be at once, be it physically, be it online, or be it in people's minds.
Have you found that the industry has changed?
Absolutely. Yeah.
When you started?
Yeah, 100%. So when I started, the idea of a female musician, it wasn't really a thing. or it was, but it was kind of like, you know, you were the token musician, you were the token bassist or drummer. And I'm sorry, girls, I don't speak for everyone, I don't speak for all the players out there, but they weren't very good. And it was almost like that feminist quality meant that overrode one's ability as a musician. And for me,
I would say with that, because that is something that I have found as someone that I've been doing this for years, and I, you know, have run female bands. The thing is, I found that when I was starting, because there wasn't a lot of female.
Yeah, exactly. So the actual number of people that you could.
Sorry, just want it. Yeah, that's a bit prettier sight than seeing a women's side down. But yeah.
No, that's fine. So the number of musicians to pull on, there weren't that many, and I was one of the few. And I just thought, you know what, I want to be really good, and being good at my instrument was really important to me. So I really kind of put in the effort and the work, and I'm not saying that the other female musicians out there didn't, but what I found as the industry has developed is that there are far more excellent female musicians on the scene. My God, like I did a rehearsal a couple of years ago, and there was a young guitarist there called Isabel Torres. She was 18. Yeah. And she was playing, and I just looked at her and I said, Izzy, you're really good. Like, you know, it was just a statement of fact. It wasn't me trying to get something out of her. It was just, but it was a musicianship that I hadn't seen in a woman before. And I said, you know, you're really damn good. And I have seen that style of musicianship come up again and again and again. It's just the number of women learning to play, the number of girls learning to play, seeing people like me on stage, seeing people like you on stage, and going, actually, hang on a minute, this is an option for me. This is something that I can do.
And I don't know, you could, well, not saying you don't, but it's easier to see it and be it if you can. So it's easier to be it if you can see it.
Exactly.
And you're seeing a really good standard.
Yes,
in every area.
Yeah. I know that there were two. So there were. Oh, sorry, go on.
I said, then it becomes normal.
Yes.
Normal, you think you can do it.
Yeah, it was only when I heard one of the kind of pushes into professional work was actually given to me by my bass teacher at the time, and he said, do you know Yolanda Charles? And Yolanda Charles plays for I'm not even going to start listing the names, but at the time she used to play for Robbie Williams. And I was like, hang on, people can do that? I could do that. And then David Bowie's bass player, Gail Dorsey, I was like, that's a woman. Like, that's a woman on stage. That's a thing I can do. So you're absolutely right. If you see it, then it can become reality. Yeah, but it
makes it a lot more easy for you to go, right, okay.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, what they say, like visualizing, you know, you're now able to visualize it in real life.
Yeah.
Do you, as far as, you know, how you are treated as a musician, because I know even the, not so much for singers, because it's sort of a given. Singers, I always go, oh, you're the favourite singer. But before it was, a female band or a female musician. Now I you know, it's more relaxed, I feel.
Yes, no, I would feel it is more relaxed. However, the sexism is still there. And having worked in a number of different, you know, quite a few different genres, I know that there are some spaces that you won't see women in. You still won't see them in. Or if you do see them in it, you'll see them. So, for example, like female DJs. So there are quite a few excellent female DJs. But whenever they release something, it's assumed that a man must have done the work.
Done that. You've been DJing as well, haven't you?
I am DJing, but I don't do my own. I definitely don't do my own stuff. I just mix stuff. But yeah, so that is a portion of it. So I feel that there's a long way to go. But something I was told by an old tour manager on stage, because when I was younger, when I just first started touring, I was quite insecure about myself as a performer. You know, I felt like I didn't have a right to be on stage. I didn't feel worthy about being on stage. And a tour manager said to me, he was quite a brusque, kind of angry man, as tour managers tend to be. He said to me, Kat, I saw so many young girls looking at you today on stage. And he said, you will have influenced some of them. And I thought, oh, maybe I'll keep going then. And I just want to, you know, it's not like I go on stage and go, play, everyone must play like me. But, you know, there's that responsibility. I feel it's a huge responsibility whenever I go on stage, you know, get it right, because there's going to be
someone watching you.
Yeah, definitely.
I remember doing a function once. I'll never forget it. It was so funny. There was a young girl. It was a New Year's gig. Awful gig though. It like all I think it was Alton Towers or
one of those, yeah.
But and this young girl copied every last move I did, as in every dance move, and to the point of me saying good night everyone. I put my hand in the air, she put her hand in the air. I put the mic down, she put the mic down, and I walked off, and she walked. So there you go. You need to, where are you walking to? Because you can't come to the same place as that. And it was just like, you know, and then I think I went and spoke to her afterwards just to say, you know, thank you, you've been so happy and thanks for watching. But, you know, people, there's always someone watching you and being influenced by you.
Yeah.
Which is just so powerful, and it's something you can't forget, you know.
Hugely powerful, and I feel it is very easy to forget that, especially when kind of just like rolling on stage, it does become fairly normal. You know, some people pull out their chair and sit at a desk. I put a face on full of makeup and I go on stage, and it's very easy to forget that there's going to be someone in that room looking at you, watching. I did a TV thing. Well, it would have been more than a few weeks ago, and I got an email from the organizer complimenting me on my playing, and I'd never had that before, and I didn't really notice him either, but he was watching, and he let me know. So to receive that from someone I didn't know I was just, because I mean, I went on, I did a good job, I learned the stuff, I played well, blah 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 blah, and then I went and had a glass of prosecco and I went home. You know, and that was it for me. But for him, he was still thinking about it, and I got a lovely email from him. So thank you.
Really so nice, isn't it, to get a bit of a sort of appreciation, or just a bit of appreciation of what you're doing.
Yeah, it was rare. A rare thing.
But my darling, it has been an absolute pleasure talking to you.
Thank you very much.
So much. And just everyone else, I'm looking forward to you joining me again next week, where we're going to have a lovely session chat. And I won't tell you who that is just yet, but a massive thank you to you, Kat. And I just
thank you.
All the best. Thanks, Daisy says thanks, Leah says thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys, for listening. I really, really appreciate it. And
appreciate it.
Stay safe.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.